Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. Thanks for joining in. This will be my first video for the channel, and so I thought it might be a good idea to start with kind of a reading wrap up, discuss some of the books that I bought for October, and then also what I'm currently reading. So the first book that I ended up reading in October was Taiwan Travelong by Yang Shuangzi. And so this book, it follows a Japanese author, Aoyama, and they are visiting Taiwan on a government sponsored reading tour. And so they start off, they have kind of a government provided translator, and they're really unsatisfied with this. They're really trying to get at, I guess, what would be the heart of Taiwan, and trying to really embrace the local culture. And so they end up dismissing the government sponsored translator and finding another translator who is a little more in tune with the local culture. Now, of course, this kind of gets into questions of what is really local culture, and that is kind of at the heart of this book. And so, gonna kind of get into some spoilers here. So, if you're interested, go ahead and kind of click away. At the heart of this book is a question of power, imperialism, colonization, because it is set in Taiwan during Imperial Japan. And so you have multiple layers going on. You have indigenous culture in Taiwan, you have Chinese migrants ethnically, you also have Japan government employees, as well as just Japanese people who migrated to the islands. And you have all of these different cultures that are coming together. And the author, Yang Shuangzi, really tries to show this through food. And so at first, I did really kind of have a lot of problem with the depictions that the author was going for, because this novel is so grounded in food and historically Japanese dishes and historically Taiwanese dishes, and then again the indigenous dishes as well. So at first, the novel was really difficult because I didn't have that kind of cultural background to make sense of these dishes. But as the novel goes on, there kind of starts to be a breakdown of that, and food really becomes more of an entry point for these more intense conversations. And so this was something that when I saw the author speak at a library event recently, that they really touched on. They wanted to use food as an entry point to have these hard, difficult conversations about history and imperialism and colonization. And so even if you don't have this background knowledge, I highly recommend giving the book a shot, because it is a situation where, as an American, we hear Taiwan kind of pop up every once in a while through global politics, but we don't really have that historical knowledge. And so this is a really good, I think, entry point to begin learning more about that and beginning to have those harder conversations that need to take place. I also think that this highlights the importance of going to local events to hear authors actually speak about their work. I've been to a few now, and it's really given me such a deep appreciation for the novel that I'm currently reading. I did go to the event only about halfway through the book, and I think that going to the event was really what made the book stick with me and allowed me to kind of finish up. So that was Taiwan Travelogue. I highly recommend the book. There's so much more I could say about it, but I'll let you make your own decisions about that if you decide to read the book further. The next book that I finished in October was The Slow Worm Song, covering up the title there, The Slow Worm Song by Andrew Miller. And this is a book about the troubles that took place in Northern Ireland. We follow the main character, Stephen Rose. He receives a letter from a commission that is investigating events that took place during the troubles. And so we do know that he was involved as a soldier, but we don't entirely know what took place. And so a lot of the novel is kind of leading up to finding out what happened. But one thing that I think is really great, and kind of getting into potential spoilers here, so if you want to, feel free to click away. But one thing that I think Andrew Miller did that is really great and changes the novel entirely is we really only discuss the particular event very briefly. It's maybe a page or two. And so we really get into questions of, is the event itself more important and impactful, or is kind of the fallout around that and what we do afterwards what gives the impactful event like that its meaning and longevity in our minds. Another storyline in the book is Stephen reconnecting with his daughter. The novel is kind of this letter to his daughter, and he is using writing as a way to discuss these incredibly sensitive topics. And eventually, his daughter does find the letter. She feels that she's been lied to, and so she kind of escapes, and Stephen ends up spiraling. And towards the end we see them do reconcile, and we kind of see them come back together, which I think is an individual moment that speaks to the larger message of the book. And I think that one of the things I loved about this book is at the end, Stephen does go and eventually face the commission, but at the end of the book we see that he's done writing this letter to his daughter as well, because he has finally found the strength to actually speak to his actions and speak to other people about the way that his actions impact others, impact himself. And so I think that the way the novel is structured is really great, because we see how writing versus speaking can convey different messages, and also what that means for us as individuals, but also entire communities. And I think that's a great metaphor for some of the events that maybe took place during that time period as well. And so that was The Slow Worm Song by Andrew Miller. Tremendous novel, probably my favorite for the month. And I definitely want to look more at Andrew Miller's other work as well. The last book that I read and finished in October was Invisible Ink by Patrick Modiano. So this is translated from French by Mark Polizzotti. I should mention that Taiwan Travelogue was translated into English by Lynn King as well. But Invisible Ink by Patrick Modiano. This is the second Modiano that I have read so far. His first book is Little Jewel, which I really loved. I did really like that. Invisible Ink, I was a little more lukewarm on. So for Invisible Ink, we follow kind of a detective who was given a case, I think about 30 years in the past, to track down this woman who went missing. And so throughout the novel, we kind of see Modiano play with a sense of time and memory, and how that can get shifted and it moves around. The novel is very disjointed. Some things take place 10 years in the future, things take, I think, like 15 years, and so on. And then at the very end, we see the narrator switch as well, which I think was a really great choice stylistically. And so this novel is really great at discussing how do we know how to trust our memories, and what can we trust from our memories? How does this impact how we relate to other people? And I think Modiano books are great because they have this vibe about them to where nothing entirely really happens. This novel just kind of ends, and we don't really get much of a resolution. But I think that's a great choice, because is the story about the resolution, or is it just a conduit to have these more in-depth and deep discussions about memory and time in general? The novel does take a type of kind of a detective crime thriller, which really isn't my strong suit, but I think that it does serve this novel really well. It is a very short novel. I think 160 or so pages, maybe. Yeah, 165 pages. So very short novel. Knocked it out in like 2 or maybe 3 days. And so I do recommend it. I like Modiano's stuff between this and Little Joel. Like I said, they just have kind of a vibe to them that I really enjoy. So that was Invisible Ink by Patrick Modiano. Next, I wanted to kind of talk about the books that I purchased in October. And then lastly, we'll go into what I am currently reading. One book that I purchased is The Door by Magda Szabo. It's translated by Lynn Ricks, and an introduction by Ali Smith. It's a NYRB classics book. I've had really good luck with their books recently. I know crazy popular for the aesthetics, but also the novels that they publish are just tend to be amazing. This one is, I think, a little semi autobiographical based on what I was reading. It follows Magda, who is a Hungarian writer, um, and her interactions with her housekeeper. And I think throughout all of this, I think that there's some discussions about Hungary's Communist Party at the time. And so I think there's going to be some great discussions about uh, internal effects and revelations, reflections, but also interpersonal, how we interact on a one-on-one level with other people. And then I think, as with so many books that I do tend to enjoy, I think there will be a level of political nature to this as well in discussion. So that was one book that I picked up, The Door by Magda Szabo. The next book that I picked up in October is Ultramarine. Scoot that back. Ultramarine by Mariette Navarro, and this is translated from French by Yves Hill Agnes. This is published by Deep Vellum, a independent book publisher based out of Dallas. And so I'm really excited about this. This is fairly short, and so I think that it's going to really pack a punch. A couple of other book channels I watch have read this and I think seem to really enjoy it. I love the premise of it's a female ship captain. They're in the ocean. She lets her crew go swimming. I think it says 20 men go swimming and 21 come back, which I think is a great twist because usually you'd expect 20 go swimming and 19 come back. And so I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to talk a lot about internal psychology, and I'm sure there will be some reflections on gender. That is Ultramarine by Mariette Navarro. Another book that I picked up this month, I did go a little crazy with my book buying, is Beauty is a Wound. This is by Eka Kurniawan. I believe that they're an Indonesian author, and the book is translated by Annie Tucker. This is published by New Directions Press. And so that is Beauty is a Wound. I think that it is an Indonesian novel kind of related to 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And the synopsis, we kind of follow multiple generations, and as I think they go through some pretty intense and rough times. I read 100 Years of Solitude earlier this year, so I think I want to kind of jump back into a similar book. So that is Beauty is a Wound by Eka Kurniawan. I apologize for any mispronunciations. My next book is The Pornographer by John Magahern. And again, a NYRB classics book here. This one, I think it follows an author, a writer who tends to write kind of smutty pieces, more lowbrow writing. And I think basically we just kind of follow his life. And so I think it'll be another one where we get really intense with a character and kind of follow them throughout their life. Those very internal, reflective type of stories seem right up my alley. So that's The Pornographer by John Magahern. And then I have one more Irish author book that I picked up. This one was actually a gift. This is Close to Home by Michael Maggie. And again, I think that this one, similar to the Slow Worm Song, kind of deals with the impacts of the Troubles. And I think it is set in Belfast. I think that one of the characters is LGBT. And so I think that we'll kind of deal a lot with masculinity issues and how that affects gender, sexuality, but also the impact of the Troubles on masculinity. And so that is Close to Home by Michael Maggie. And then also this month, I picked up the third book in Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series, The Hero of Ages. And so I'm kind of working my way through a lot of Sanderson's Cosmere stuff. I'm currently a little bit left on the second Mistborn book. I read Stormlight end of last year, early this year, and I know everybody says to start with Mistborn. I did the other way around. And so I'm excited to go through Mistborn. I'm really liking the series on its own, and I'm excited to go and reread Stormlight afterwards with having some background knowledge. So that is Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. And then the last book that I picked up in the month of October, which brings us into what I'm currently reading, this is Vineland by Thomas Pynchon. And so I saw One Battle After Another when it came out, and I really enjoyed the movie. I know that it's a very loose adaptation, and so I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. This is my first Pynchon novel. I'm about 50 pages into this so far, and I'm really enjoying it. We follow Zoid Willer as he kind of has run ins with the federal government. As I think people kind of expect with Pynchon, there's a lot of cultural references in there as well. And so, not too much to say on this yet. Hopefully, I'll be able to finish this up in the month of November and have a little bit more to say about it. And I'm hoping this is going to be a good first dip into Pynchon. So, that is Vineland by Pynchon, last novel I picked up for October, and one of the books that I'm currently reading. And then the last book that I'll touch on here is one that I'm currently reading as well. I started this towards the very end of September, so probably could have included it in the October video, but I'll just touch on it here. I wasn't quite able to get to finish, and that is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second novel in the Mistborn trilogy, the first round of Mistborn. I know there's a second series as well, and am really enjoying this. I have had some trouble kind of getting into it, and I think that is why it has taken me a little bit longer than the first Mistborn book. But I'm have probably 250 pages left or so, and so I should be finishing up here hopefully within maybe the next week. We are just continuing to kind of follow the main set of characters that we did in the first one. I am reading Mistborn more as kind of a casual reading, and so I don't have too much to say in terms of a critical lens or anything like that. More so just for enjoyment. I do think that this one feels a lot slower than the first one, and so I think that has made the reading a little bit more difficult. But I am excited to see where we end up at the end of this one. I know I'm getting ready to approach what is known as the Sanderlanche, and then that'll lead right into the third Mistborn that I spoke about previously. So I know I touched on a lot of books. I went kind of crazy with my book buying for this month, but those are all the books that I'm currently reading or did read in October, as well as the set of books that I purchased also. If you have read any of these or have any experience with them, I love to strike up a discussion. Again, this is my first video, so I'm really excited to start discussing books with other people out there. And if you have any recommendations, I mean, my bookshelves here are kind of full. These are read books, and then over here is unread so far. And so, if you want to kind of zoom in and go through any of those to see if you would have any recommendations based on what it looks like my taste is, I'm more than open to those. And also, if you have any ideas of videos that you'd love to see, feel free to let me know. I'm very open to ideas, totally new to this, and so I'm just excited to see how this goes. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.